So, Rob, it is an absolute pleasure to have you on this episode of Leadership Bites. Welcome.
Thank you, Guy. Thanks for having me.
Well, there are a list of guests that I have on that every single time I get somebody on, I say the same thing, and I'm getting a little bit sick of saying it, but I'm really looking forward to this. I do know who you are, and I knew who you are for some time, but there'll be a lot of people that don't. So if you were at a barbecue, Rob, and somebody said, "What do you do, mate?" What would you say? How would you kind of get that across to somebody?
Well, if I had my T-shirt on, which said Disruptive across it, that might sell me without me needing to sell me. If I'm honest with you, Guy, the question I hate is tell everyone a bit about yourself. So I like to be frank. Now, I'm not going to do that because it's boring and no one wants to hear me sing my own hymns. So I'm going to say that I'm a disruptive entrepreneur who gets a thrill and a kick out of creating chaos rather than the life giving me chaos. I like to disrupt myself before I am disrupted. I've probably interviewed some of the most famous people in the world on my show, Disruptors. And I'm probably going to get banned for my most recent book, which is my 19th book, which is called Money Matrix. And if there's anyone that actually should be able to talk about themselves for 25 minutes straight on a podcast, it should be me, because I broke the world record for the longest public speech, which was 47 and a half hours straight. And if there's anyone that should be able to brag about being an entrepreneur rather than these TikToker kids who've not made any money, it should be me, because I've been an entrepreneur nearly 20 years and done $250 million in sales now, I think, in my training businesses. I have 14 companies and 340 rental units that I own. I don't know if we're the biggest property management firm in our city, but we have 1,350 tenants. But if anyone went online and Googled Rob Moore, they could probably find all that shit out, and it's really boring for me to read out my CV.
But it's interesting for people to know where you come from if they don't have a line of sight on you, because I do think there is something about why would I listen to this fella, and
yeah, there is.
Though you might not want to be prideful, if you say and you comment on property and you go, but I've only got one flat, that's slightly different too. Listen, I may not be Trump, but I do know what I'm talking about.
What about if I challenged you to ask me a question at the start that got that answer out of me without asking it in that way, or shocked and surprised me? What about if you said, "What's your net worth?" Now you've got me somewhere else, which is, oh, he's going for me. This is a bit interesting. Oh, I've got to sort of prove myself here without bragging, and then I probably would have said the same answer.
I'm not interested in your net worth. So we could talk about the leather thing. Is it a brace? Is it a wallet holder? Because I do see you wearing that continually. So I have a need to know what it is.
Okay, so this brand is Alexander McQueen, and 2 days before my 40th birthday, I watched the single best documentary I have ever seen. Mm-hmm. Now, I pride myself that every business-related or business-undertoned documentary on Netflix and Apple and blah, 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 I've watched them all because I love business. And actually, some of the best business ones are fashion, because you see the sort of the conflict between when the VC or the financial backer comes in, but the creative fashion designer artist wants to be an artist. There's one about Christian Dior, which is amazing. There's one called Halston, which is amazing, which has that tension. And I think business has that. And I think the best fashion designers in the world have to go through this tension of being an amazing artist and commercializing it and getting it out to as many people as possible and selling it. And I think Alexander McQueen is one of, if not the best brands for that, because that are unique and individual, and a lot of their art comes from darkness and pain. And Alexander McQueen, he hung himself on, I think it was after his mum's funeral, and he was tortured, but he was a genius. And I'm the sort of guy that once I'm in on something, I'm all in, and I'm obsessive. Like, I drink about 15 of these a day. You saw me voice memo, didn't you, before we started, guys, saying I need to get these guys as a sponsor because I've had to remortgage 4 houses to afford them. And on every single episode of content I've ever done since that day, I've worn Alexander McQueen. And because it represents to me what I am about, which is the darkness and light of life and your creative endeavor and your uniqueness. You know, you struggle against the pain and you put that out to the world and you try and do something that's original. So this is called the harness, guy. And this is like a design that's unique to Alexander McQueen. And it looks like a back brace, or it looks like a backpack, or it looks like a gun holster. And people love to take the piss. And I kind of love that because I'm rich and they're not. And they're talking about me and I'm not talking about them. And yeah, I've pretty much bought everything that Alexander McQueen has done since 5 years ago that has a harness on it. And that's what it is.
What's your darkness, Rob?
I had a major epiphany, guy, in my life just recently, and I'm 45. And I've done millions of pounds worth of personal development courses in my entrepreneurial journey, and I guess I would pride myself that I'm pretty good at self-awareness and analysis. And the thing that I figured out that I thought was my darkness was my loneliness, because when I was raised in a pub and mum and dad were just always working and they had to just leave me on my own from a really young baby to basically being the babysitter of my my sister when she was like 1 and I was 3. And I'm not knocking my parents, I love them, they did an amazing job. But I was always on my own, lonely when I was young, and my whole life I've always struggled with feeling lonely, even though like I felt the most alone when my business had its best year and its most profit. I felt the most alone when outwardly I have been the most successful in my life and achieved, you know, all those outwardly goals. But recently I got this epiphany, actually, that my darkness is avoiding confrontation with my dad. Now, my dad is 80 and I don't have any conflict with my dad, and I haven't had any conflict with my dad for 15 years. But my dad was strong, and he used to fight a lot and hurt people, and no one fucked with my dad, no one. And he would get so angry that the only way to cope would be to dance around him and dance around his anger and somehow learn to manipulate and cope with avoiding the conflict and placating. And my most recent epiphany, guy, is that is ultimately how I've learned to show up in the world. But I haven't had that conflict with my dad for 15 years. And it's really, to me, fascinating, guy, because I made a goal at the start of the year, and I didn't even know why, to get rejected every day. And conceptually, I knew, you know, the more you get rejected, the more you get accepted. You know, if I want to have the biggest guest on the world on my show, which I do, I'm probably getting rejected 5-1. So the more rejections I get, the more acceptances I get. It's just, it's a numbers game. But inside and unconsciously, there's some barrier there. And so clearly the universe is like, Rob, you know, you've taken, honestly, the rejection I've taken in the last 17 years, guy, it is daily, it is brutal. But if I want to go from Decker or centimillionaire to billionaire, I've got to go to the next level. I mean, Andrew Tate and Donald Trump and, you know, whoever, they get rejected by tens or hundreds of millions of people. So they're the two darkest things in my life that I've really had to face. And it's fucking scary and relentless because every day you don't face them, you know, what you repress must be expressed. And what you avoid doesn't go away. It just gets bigger. So they're mine. They're my two.
Thank you. Where's your happiness? If you're chasing these next levels, is the happiness present with you today, but you'll just be richer? Or is it, where are you now?
Well, happiness isn't my goal, Guy. And I kind of want it to be. And my entire body emotionally is like, oh, just enjoy it. Just take a step back. Just celebrate. Oh, don't do that hard thing today. And all the emotions are like going back to just avoid the conflict. Just let it all be nice. Oh, Dad, everything's all right. Everything's all right. Dad. Oh, that's good. We're happy now. And my body is urging me to do that a lot. But this is not my purpose. My purpose is to help as many people on this planet get better financial knowledge. I've got to fight the banks. I've got to fight my publishers because they didn't take my book, Money Matrix. They essentially banned it. I've got to fight the people who are in my way. I've got to fight the UK government. So the goal for me isn't happiness, Guy, and if it was, I wouldn't be good at my job. My job is to help as many people on this planet get better financial knowledge. And I know that the more people I can help with that, the more rich I'm going to get. And so my happiness comes from fighting the fight and winning, or fighting the fight and not breaking, or pushing myself through challenge and, you know, coming out the other side. And actually, my highest value is growth and progress, so it proves I'm doing the right thing. So the hardest things that I face and overcome and grow through and learn through, that is where my happiness comes from.
Yeah, so it's not sitting on a beach. It's the battle and what goes
being
goes
valuable.
With that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So let's talk about the money matrix. And I want to check in the difference between a marketing statement, my publishers wouldn't publish it, and the reality of that. I trust you and I believe you. Some people can hear things and go, yeah, whatever. So just tell me why people should pay attention to that book.
Okay. So the Money Matrix, the subtitle is How to Beat the Banks and Build Generational Wealth. So it's in two parts, essentially. It's 300 and odd pages. Some people are like, bloody hell, Rob, this is a long book. You haven't read my other books. I don't do pamphlets. I write books. So I wrote my first book on money in 2017, and that became a global bestseller. And not just in the left foot category, you know, in the overall categories of books. And in this journey of 17 years of learning how to get out of debt, because I was 50 grand in debt, and then become a millionaire age 31 and a decamillionaire age 35, but we don't care about my net worth, so I won't tell you what it is now. But in this journey, I figured out that the banks have just created their own game of Monopoly. And they're just the banker of their own game of Monopoly. And they're doing what your mate did when you were 14 and played Monopoly, and they were the banker, and they just hid some money, and they just cheated a bit, and they just played their game to win. That's all the banks are doing. And I used to get really angry and pissed off and morally high groundish and judging this and yada, yada, yada. But most humans, if they could control the world, would print their own money and would behave like many of the banks do. I would. If you had a money printing machine for sale and I could afford it and I could buy it, I'd even get in debt to buy it. And if I got that and then every time I hit the print button, everyone else's money went down a little bit, but my net worth went up, I'd probably do it. I'd justify it. I'd tell myself a story. So I figured out, actually, the banks have just created a smart system and they control the people because the people are the product, because they make the money out of the people. They make the money through debt, interest, and tax. And when I figured out actually what they do and how they do it, and actually it's really freaking smart, all I did was flip it 180 and go, well, how can you do it? First of all, I did it. So, for example, I have virtually no savings in the bank, but I have tens of millions of pounds worth of mortgages. And a lot of conventional people go, oh, Rob's tens of millions in debt, you know, he doesn't own all of his properties. No, I'm leveraging the bank's money to make millions, and I'm not letting the bank leverage my money to make millions, but everyone else is the other way around. They're giving their savings to the bank, which is essentially taking all the risk and lending their savings to the bank so the bank can make money on your money. And they're giving you, you want to call me a marketer for saying that the publisher banned my book, which I'll come to in a minute. The banks are the best marketers in the world. Oh, your money is safe with us. No, it's not. Oh, we will help you to a better future. No, you won't. Oh, this will be good for your pension and your retirement. No, it won't. They're fucking brilliant marketers. But they're also liars. So I expose this in Money Matrix, the first half of the book. And then I give you 200 pages of strategy and tactic on how to get rich, playing the banks at their own game. Now, I wrote Money in 2017, and then I wrote a few books after. I'm Worth More, Start Now, Get Perfect Later. And the books that did the best for me were direct talking about money. So my publisher said to me, Rob, we need to talk about what the next book's going to be. But you need to be irreverent, like the old Rob. Like the Rob that wrote Money. Irreverent. So I went and wrote an irreverent book called Money Matrix. And my publisher took months to respond and wrote a really long email, which I could translate, said, this book is too political. Which I can translate to say, this book is too dangerous for us. So I said, okay, no worries. I'll write you another book. And he went, yeah, okay. Now, so that's actually what happened, Guy. But the translation of that is they refused to publish Money Matrix. So I published it anyway. And too political means too honest and too dangerous. And that's what happened.
And can I ask why they would be hesitant? What is their fear?
I mean, you can ask it. I can't speak for them.
What would you hypothesize?
Yeah. So I'll hypothesize. The nature of my content calls out the very system that controls my publishers. I mean, that would be the summary of it. Now, 'cause remember, I'm published by Hachette. They're second biggest in the world behind Penguin. And then I'm in a division of Hachette, which is essentially the non-fiction, which is John Murray Learning, which I think is being rebranded. And then I've got one person in that division that manages me. So there's quite a hierarchy, and I'm sure the one person didn't go up to one of the 12 elite families in the world just to say, oh, should we just check Money Matrix and see if we print it? But there would have been an awareness that this is too dangerous for them. And I've got a great relationship with the person that manages me. I find it ironic that he wanted to be more irreverent, and I wrote an irreverent book and he turned it down. And he's going to come to me and probably be a bit perturbed that I've gone and self-published this anyway. But remember, my show is called Disruptive and not boring or safe. So, yeah, I imagine he might perceive it's dangerous or could get them into the thing is with me self-publishing it, Guy, is let's say I get an email or a knock on the door or a phone call and someone very powerful or someone linked to someone very powerful says, Rob, we don't like this. I've either got the choice to do it anyway or I've got the choice to edit it out of my book. My publishers don't want to put themselves in that position. I'll give you another example. My books have been translated into 14 languages. And in the Eastern countries, especially China and Korea, they take out the section of the book where I criticize socialism and communism. Now that kind of makes sense, doesn't it? But that's essentially a compromise that's been made. And I might face that bridge if powerful people come to me and say, hey, Rob, we don't like this. But it may never happen because, I don't know, maybe I'm not big enough, or maybe I speak truth, or maybe there isn't a matrix like Andrew Tate says there is.
Well, you've hit on a couple of things there. I'm going to talk about the matrix in a second. The answer to who should read this book probably is, anybody that wants to read the book. But actually, just out of sheer interest and to be a little bit, the younger you read it, the better?
Well, no one can reverse their age. So is that your way of saying read it now, or is that your way of saying...
Well, what I mean is, read it if you're interested, read it if it makes sense. But actually, would I give it to somebody young? Because actually, the quicker they understand what's in there, the better it is.
Yes, I would definitely agree with that. If it's okay for the banks and central governments to market to us in a way via media and propaganda, a rhetoric which makes them profit over maybe our well-being, is it okay for me to do the opposite, which is teach them how the system really works and get rich leveraging the system and knowing their ulterior motives? Seems okay to me. Is that something that everyone on this planet should fucking know? Absolutely. Like, if you don't know how you are operated on and controlled and influenced and manipulated via medicine, media, money, and I'd love to come up with another M for government, because then I can create a new piece of IP. If anyone's got any thoughts, let me know. You need to know what's going on. And if I'm going to get in a bit of trouble for that, well, I'll face it.
Yeah,
but
George...
our children need to know this guy. But so do our parents.
Yeah. George Carlin, the comedian, said there doesn't need to be a conspiracy if everybody's agenda is the same. Which I kind of hear in what you're sort of saying there. So you spoke about The Matrix, you spoke about Andrew Tate. Andrew Tate is a fascinating character who I've just obviously seen what's just happened to him again in the Ukraine with I think he's being extradited to the UK. And is he indicative of, because regardless of your opinion on him, he's a very, and his brother Tristan, they're incredibly smart guys. They're very well thought out. They have a particular opinion, and they've either done something wrong and they're covering it very well, or they haven't, and the world is against them. As an observer, I have a sense that actually they talk a pretty honest game. And actually, particularly Tristan, I kind of look at him and I go, of course, you could be anything, anybody can put on a facade. But actually they come across, I think, but they speak very well. But they speak about the Matrix. They speak about escaping the Matrix. And is that the territory that we're in? That, in essence, your book sits and in that territory of, you're not maybe going as far as they do, but actually in this particular commercial space, you're saying, actually, you are very potentially in a position where you are blinkered, you don't have a line of sight, you're not being curious. Even if you disagree with me, what are you doing, to find out about it? And it feels as if that's the kind of space that we're in.
Yeah, so there's a lot of context here. I'll try and unpack it concisely. So Andrew Tate talks a lot about the Matrix, and he's called the system the Matrix. And he's not the only one that's done that, but he's popularized it. Does he actually know what the Matrix is, or is the Matrix a symbol? Because imagine you are the Matrix. Are you going to let anyone know what your Matrix is and where you meet and what your agenda is? No. So, because I have this discussion with my business partner a lot, because he's like, Rob, do you actually think there's a Matrix? Because I don't think he does. And I think the truth might lie somewhere between his opinion and Andrew Tate's. Do I think there's families who are very powerful that have been powerful for 1,000 years? Yeah, because there's royal family lineage in the UK. So, whether it's a Rothschild family or someone like that, are they powerful and influential? Yeah. Are the Walton family corporately influential? Yeah. Is the Murdoch family media influential? Yeah. So, do I believe there are very powerful families who have a lot of influence and control over the world? Yes. Do I believe there's 6 or 8 of them that are a secret cabal that meet in secret and are Satanists and, sacrifice virgins in their get-together masterminds? Probably fucking not.
Although maybe.
Yeah. You're like, oh, you're guys like, how much does it cost to buy into that? So that probably doesn't exist because that's probably fantasy. So the truth is probably somewhere in the middle, but we're never going to know. So what I've created with the money matrix is a bit of an in-betweener, where it's like, nah, the matrix, the 12 Satanist families, nah, bit of, it's a good marketing play that. I've not seen the proof. Everyone who I ask, this is interesting, Guy, and maybe you could do this in the future. I love to ask everyone who controls the world, and no one can name a name. And everyone who says, well, it's the cabal, and they never can name them, not even David Icke. So, you know what, until you bloody can, you've got no proof. However, is there a central banking system that is essentially a monopoly on money? Yes. Is there a government that should be independent of the central banks, but actually they're not independent and they're one and the same? I believe yes. Do the banks make money out of you, and are you the product? Yes. Do they control the value of money? Can they inflate or erode the value of your money? Yes. Can they earn on your debt? Yes. Can they, if they educate you on what they do, is that going to make them less able to do it? Yes. So do they want you to know how they make money out of you? No. So do they want people like me gobbing off? No, probably not. But they can't kill us all or silence us all. And actually, what I say, a lot of it is common sense, i.e., learn how the banks leverage debt to build assets and leverage debt to build assets. Learn how the banks understand how to productize you and monetize you, and do that for yourself. Like, for example, on social media, if you're scrolling and swiping, you are the product. Because the longer you're on social media, the more the advertisers and the corporates make money. Whereas if you're a creator like us, Guy, and you're on social media posting your podcasts, and you've got a membership site or a mastermind, or you've got an information product that you sell, and every time you go on social media it's to generate leads and sales, you are not the product. The consumers are the product. So in the world of banking and money and finance and government, they are the producers and we are the consumers, and they make money out of us. So I teach people how to be a producer and have their clients as the consumers. So these are just some of the things that I'm trying to teach the world, which is really freaking important. Do I think Andrew Tate speaks some truth? Yes. Do I believe he's one of the best living marketers? Yes. Are all marketers liars? Well, Seth Godin thinks so, and I'm going to leave it at that.
I think when I come across people, it doesn't matter who they are. Somebody says, well, I don't really agree with everything that he says. My position on that is, do you have anybody that you agree with everything that they say? And I don't. So from that perspective, I find it quite interesting. I mean, there's obviously he's very specific as a character, but also we've seen him mature. And I think that's another thing that social media is very bad at doing, which is letting you grow up. We watch you grow up, but it's almost as if, heaven forbid, you should actually be different than you were a year ago, or that you've learnt from it.
Well, Guy, no one's ever asked me that, so I want to say that, that's definitely one of the better or best questions, because I've never really thought of it like that. Because I've always looked at it that they want us controlled and uneducated. But actually, not allowing us to grow up, therefore keeping us juvenile, therefore keeping us dependent, is the same thing, isn't it? So all roads lead to ignorance and fear. Because with ignorance and fear, we do what we're told. If we think that we can get the little reward of the social credit, or the little bit of benefit payment, or, we're left with a little bit of money after tax. Or we'll put the needle in our arm because it will help us. Do you see what I mean? So for me, money is freedom, and the lack of money is you are controlled by someone. So people think I'm quite money hungry. They think I'm money focused. I mean, I'm one of the top educators in the world on money. I'm going to talk a lot about money. But to me, when you have independent wealth, financial security, freedom, or opulence, what you actually have is freedom. And you have the ability to say no. No, I don't want to work today. No, I won't be shut down by the government. No, no, no. Now, if you don't have money and wealth, you have no freedom because you have to say, yes, I'll bow down to the government. I'll go and do the job I don't like, because you don't have choice. So actually, if you have wealth, you have independence and freedom. And if you don't, you have dependence and control. So the way that the governments control you is keeping you having just enough money to live, but no more, and using money to profit from you and control you. And now this is why I really fear a cashless society, Guy. I know you didn't ask this, but I'm bringing it up. If there's a cashless society, they can control us more, because cash is freedom. Because a drug dealer can exchange and buy and sell drugs and not pay tax behind the government's back with cash. And now they can do it to a certain degree with crypto. But if there is central digital currencies, if they don't want you to leave the country, they'll just stop your payments. I.e., they'll be able to stop your bank account. You know, people are getting debanked. Millions of people are getting debanked. So if there's a central digital currency, they can go, oh, we don't want you to leave the country because we've decided that actually, you wrote this on social media. If they don't want you to leave the house because they want to lock down again, they can get you on frickin' GPS or whatever else it is that they track your every move. And as soon as you open the door, no money. In fact, they could empty your bank account. If they want to create inflation, they can say you have to spend all of your money in the next 30 days if they want to boost the economy, or they can do whatever they want. And there is no freedom. And they can go, Guy, they can go, own nothing and be happy. And here's your social credits. Oh, and if you're a good boy, Guy, you can get 10% extra social credits if you do what we want. If you're a naughty boy, Guy, we'll take all your social credits away. Fuck that.
And we saw that with Trudeau and the truckers, didn't we? His ability to shut down accounts. And if you actually contributed to any of their GoFundMes as a contributor, your bank got frozen. So just, these kind of things are quite...
That is a crime against humanity.
Yeah. And that does sound like a communist China move, not a it happened in Canada move.
Yeah. Well,
fascinating
I mean,
stuff.
It's even worse than China. I mean, that basically says, because China have said this, like there was some a Far Eastern bank, I can't say that it was China, but that area basically said it took the depositors' money and it said, your savings are now government assets. That was the line. So basically, by giving this control of money to the government in the form of cashless and central bank digital currencies, you're basically saying everything you own is belonged to by the government. It is owned by the government. You don't own any of it. You now have no autonomy, liberty, sovereignty, independence, freedom. You have given it all away. Oh, because you like using the tap pay, because you think Apple Pay is convenient.
Well, this is the World Economic Forum saying you will have nothing and be happy. Which is their quote is, you will own nothing and be happy. Now, I studied this and I have to say it wasn't quite as doomsday as a lot of people thought. They're talking more about the evolution of society and us exchanging and borrowing and almost going back to barter a little bit and being a bit more prudent with the resources. There was that element to it because I read the whole thing because I studied it for my book Money Matrix, and it has been taken a bit out of context. That being said, the more we pay in tax, the more we're working for the government. And the more we go to social credit or central bank digital currency, or we allow our assets to be owned centrally and not decentrally, the more of that we allow, the more we are a communist state. Well, I mean, there's a more oppressive communism which is coming. So actually, hearing Joe Rogan speak as well, he talks about having a significant amount of money that he classes as escape velocity, which is the Jordan Petersons and people like that, that when he was a professor, he didn't have escape velocity money. But then when he got a certain amount of, okay, in his context, fame, you're not talking about having to become famous. But what you are saying is if you can earn enough money that you have control over your own dominion, then that is where the balance then shifts into your favour. And fear can leave you. And it's not that you won't have anxieties, it's not that you won't have the stuff of life, but you're not oppressed in the same way on such a almost for a lifespan in some respects.
Yeah, that's
yeah.
linked back to what I said before. Money equals freedom.
Great.
And no one wants to admit it because they want to think that freedom comes in other forms and happiness comes in other forms. But if you have velocity money, which means you have enough money stashed that you can do what you want, where you want, when you want, outside of governmental control, you have ultimate freedom. And if you don't have it, you don't. So
I just want to also just shift, because time is a cruel mistress and I have to sort of talk about many things with you, is you've built up a podcast capability where you have, phenomenal guests on there. I'd just love to spend a little bit of time, and it is a little bit of a banal question, but just because, rather than, I haven't got you for 4 hours to keep digging, right? And I think I might just say, who has shone for you that maybe you expected them to and they did? I've met a few people like that where I thought they'd be good and they were, but also I've been surprised by people where I've gone blinking heck. So who shone for you?
As being
just somebody that you've sat with.
Of mine.
Yeah, I've had a couple of people on the podcast who I don't. You must have seen the In-Betweeners when they go, friends. And I was talking to Duke Stump, who was with a name like that, you better be in marketing, but he was head of marketing for Nike and Lululemon and stuff like that. And there was a bit in the podcast where you can literally see me go, friends, because he had an energy. And he just shone. And so I just think anybody that you just looked at, and just went, yeah, you're impressive, aren't you? Maybe for different reasons, or you just felt a connection, just that gave you a warmth or a sense of, there's something about you.
You don't understand, maybe, Guy, or maybe you do, how complex that question is. And I don't like giving flippant answers. I like giving very contextual answers, because I think context is what's lacking in the content.
Well, give them a context. In that context, that person resonated. So it's not that, because they're all, you've got some great people on there. So there's a long list of people that are characters and personalities. But is there just anybody that, in the context of the question that you asked them, the honesty of their response? I just look at the Eubank thing about his son. There are different things going on for different people, but maybe which are the ones that come to the front of your mind when you think about all of those guests that you had on?
Yeah, so often the best performing interviews are the ones that are the most memorable, and therefore usually memorable are not, oh, that was a really well thought out answer, or, Rob got on really well with that guest and they had a really good dialogue. I mean, that's what should, in an ideal fantasy world, drive really good engagement and views. But generally what creates good engagement and views is conflict and weirdness. And so I've tried to embrace more the conflict and the weirdness as an interviewer, Guy, because I've now done over 1,000 episodes of Disruptors. And I always wanted to have a really good conversation and get on really well with my guest. If you are an artist and no one sees your work, are you an artist? And I have this internal dialogue with myself such that part of me wants to be selfish and just do the interviews I want to do and not ask what I believe to be gimmicky or beneath me questions. But if they don't get the views, am I really an artist? Or is a great artist someone who can commercialize scale? So I'll give you I love Radiohead and I love Porcupine Tree, who are very progressive rock bands. I used to love Muse and Coldplay when they were very original and in the progressive genre. Now Muse and Coldplay are stadium bands, and for many years I disowned them personally. I didn't like them for selling out. And then I realized actually what they've done well is commercializing their art And being able to do it year after year and make millions of people happy and make a great sound in a big stadium is actually a skill, and I admire it. Probably one of my favorite metal bands is Rammstein. And that they have managed to commercialize dirty German heavy metal. And to be able to take dirty German heavy metal, which was probably only for the gay scene in Germany before, and I know I'm making a stereotype, but you know what I mean. It has got connotations. It's got real connotations. But then play it in stadiums across the world for 40 and 50 and 100,000 people and make it a show and have pyro. And actually, their sound is quite basic. And you realise when you go to a stadium why it needs to be basic. Like all the drum beats are... Because otherwise, if it was too complex, it wouldn't translate in a stadium. So, Guy, you didn't even ask me this, but it's really important to answer this question with a load of context. So I now look at my interviews with all this context and think, okay, can I get on with them and have a contact with them afterwards, but challenge them as hard as I can without them hating me and walking out? And can I ask questions I want, but also try and leverage trends and newsjack and hit viral points? So with all of that in the mix, the best guests are the ones that do all of that. Now, Jake Paul was probably the worst performing guest in terms of his arrogance and apathy, but I had tens of millions of views on TikTok and still am getting with him. So I have to say that was a good one. Chris Eubank was the most rude, obnoxious, arrogant, abrasive, but actually probably shows my best skill. It's probably the best handling I've ever done of an interview. So I have to love that. The Tates, I think most people would agree, and I'm not just saying this, most people agree, I have interviewed them the best. Because I let them speak, and it's not about me, and yada yada, and I ask the challenging questions. So those kind of people are the best overall interviews with all of that context. But they're not the ones that you'd say there was the greatest rapport, or I was enlightened the most by them. I mean, I've interviewed 21 billionaires. I probably can't remember 15 of them. I interviewed, Macy Williams when she was at the height of Game of Thrones. But there was no conflict there. It was just nice. So I didn't answer your question, Guy, but hopefully the answer was insightful.
Well, I think there's something about, as you say, different personalities and different contexts are bringing different things. I think I'm interested in anything that you walked away from where it meant something to you personally.
Okay, so there's one, but no one's going to know. This
Doesn't
is
matter.
like the most irrelevant answer. Because do you know who Stephen Wilson is?
I will do in a minute.
You don't. So Stephen Wilson is the lead singer of a band called Porcupine Tree, who are pretty much regarded as the progressive rock gods. And if you Google who is the god of progressive rock, Stephen Wilson's name in massive letters comes up at the top. And no one fucking knows him. And I love him. And like, I love his music, I love his manner. And he's not your typical, he doesn't wear shoes. He's not like a rah-rah rocker. He's quite a small framed guy. And I just think he's amazing. And I've now interviewed him, 2 or 3 times. We've become friends. He invites me to his gigs. He gives me the best tickets. He invited me to the first screening of his new album. We stay in touch. And actually, I get hundreds of thousands of views on his content. And so it's like not millions, but hundreds of thousands. And no one fucking knows him and no one's interested. But if you want deep, intense, respectful, artistic, creative conversations from a business and a commercial juxtaposition, Google Stephen Wilson, Rob Moore, and watch them all. And if that's your vibe, you will love them.
Now, you are, I'm going to use that word, well, how does it go? In Pulp Fiction, Mr. Wolf says, just because you are a character doesn't mean you have character. So you seem both. You know, you are a character, and I say that in a nice way. You know, you have a personality. It's strong. It's present, and it's enjoyable. And you know, a person of character, I just would work on the assumption that you are. And moving forward for you, Rob, what's the challenge for you? Because it feels as if you turn your eye to a thing. I know you've spoken about educating people, but is it's just that moving forward? But, you know, and you're still a young man. So what is it for you where's the real challenge for you? Is it anything that scares you a little bit, but you're going to do it anyway? You know, what might be the stuff that says, look, the stuff I know I can do if I put my mind to it, but actually, you know, what might be a little bit scary for Rob Moore?
Okay, so you've asked me what might be scary for Rob Moore, but you've pre-framed it with just because. What was the quote again? Just say it.
So the quote was, just because you are a character doesn't mean you have character. And
right.
My observation
I'm going to answer that one.
Yes.
You didn't ask that question, but why would you frame up the question by saying
because
that?
I feel that you have both things going on. So I'm not offering it as an observation that you are a character and you don't have character. I think I observe that you have both. And that would tell me that, and listening to what you've achieved and the energy that you've got and just the way you are, that, you know, there aren't many things that, you know, they might excite you, but I don't know if they'd scare you. And I just wonder what that might be, if there is something.
Yeah, so I'm riddled with fear every day. Basic things like I'm scared of my kids getting kidnapped, or I sometimes have visions of my daughter running out into the road and just getting squashed by a bus. And, you know, those fears, they're there. And then I'm scared of getting rejected at times, or facing conflicting, challenging situations, and there being a messiness. I don't like being judged, but we all do it, so I sort of have to accept it. But like at times that can pick a scab for me, Guy. So, you know, yes, I've got this persona. I speak with volition and confidence and power on the subjects I'm confident in. I don't in the things I'm not. If you ask me about religion, you would not see the same demeanor, because I don't have the knowledge in it, and I don't even know what I believe. And I'm really respectful of everyone's individual beliefs. So no one asked me about it, which I'm kind of relieved. And I just don't go there. So you're seeing a more powerful character-like state and an energeticness in something, because I can own that I'm confident in this area. But yeah, I'm riddled with fear, but I'm also riddled with a good dialogue of how to face the fear and overcome it. And, you know, I essentially have these two characters, and I know we're all different, Guy, but the way I navigate my mind is I have noisy internal dialogue, and there's two versions of me. So there's the childish, rejected, overweight, young, jealous, bitter, repressed, scared version of me, that was me growing up, Guy, and it sits there-ish. It's almost like a parrot on your shoulder. And then there's this guy who's made hundreds of millions in sales, written dozens of books, been very successful, actually, in the top 0.001% probably, who's done so many personal development courses and read zillions of books and podcasts and interviewed a load of people and got a really good network. And there's these two, and they're always fucking arguing with each other all fucking day, every day. And at times this guy wins, and at times this guy wins. And at times I want to go and hide away, and at times I'm like, want to show the world, and I just try and show up regardless, Guy. And I try and breathe through the moments and the days and the weeks and the months, or just the minutes where this one is winning. And that's me, and I reckon that's everyone. Now, some people are more feely-based than chatter-based, but I reckon that's everyone. And, like, don't put anyone on a pedestal that, you know, a superhuman, which I'm definitely not, is any different to you. Someone who's successful, all they've done is faced it and pushed through it. They have not avoided it, and it's not that it doesn't exist. Everything that's your insecurity about moving forward, everyone else has had to face. Every winner was once a beginner. Every master was once a disaster. You know, all these amazing martial artists who win the UFC, they were a white belt once, getting, you know, rinsed. So, and if I look at all my friends and people I look up to who are really successful, they're riddled with fears as well, because it's human to be riddled with fears. What they're really good at is doing it anyway.
Okay, Rob, with a bottle of wine and the right pizza, I could probably go all weekend with you. So, I recognise time. If people want to pay attention to you, which I think some people will do, I'm going to put everything in the description, but where do people go for Rob stuff?
Okay, so right now Money Matrix is fairly new, very new. So moneymatrix.cash, and you can get information on what's in the book. And this might be done, or there might still be a few available, Guy, but I did do some nice book launch bonuses. The special new Money Matrix 3-day event. It's the Moneymaker Summit edition. And so the chance to get a dinner or a champagne reception with me and my multi-millionaire friends. So that's all at moneymatrix.cash. Don't shoot me if they're gone, but you can still grab a copy of the book. The book will tell you where, the page will tell you where to go. And then rob.team is my centralized resource, because obviously you can find me on every social media channel. You can just search my name, Rob Moore. But rob.team, which is my digital financial freedom platform, which helps people make, manage, and multiply money. For less than 20 pence a day, no risk, cancel any time. There's hundreds of hours of courses, resources, and masterclasses to make more money and get access to all of my information on my global mission to help the entire world get better financial knowledge. And you just type in rob.team. They're probably the best places to start, because I have done thousands of episodes and thousands of bits of content, and I'm on every channel, and I've written loads of books, and it's a bit overwhelming. So moneymatrix.cash and rob.team. Baby steps.
Boom. Okay, listen, absolute rock star. I'm going to bring us to a pause. I'm going to get you to stay on for a few seconds just to make sure everything loads up. But from me and all those that are listening, thank you so much, Rob. You've been an absolute joy.